No one in the Grand Marble Hall expected the Sheikh to suddenly stand up and speak in flawless Arabic, his deep voice echoing off the golden walls. The foreign businessmen and dignitaries who had flown in from all corners of the world exchanged uneasy glances. They had come prepared with charts, presentations, and polished speeches, but not a single word in Arabic. The Sheikh's eyes swept across the room, searching for anyone who would answer him, his question hanging heavy in the air. Among the rows of polished shoes and tailored suits stood Lila, a young maid no one ever really noticed. She was there to serve tea, keep the crystal glasses filled, and slip by unnoticed like a shadow. But as the silence stretched on, she felt her heartbeat hammer in her chest. She looked at the men shifting uncomfortably, some pretending to check their phones, others clearing their throats as if they might find the right words hidden there. The Sheikh waited, his gaze calm but sharp, testing not just their business skills, but their respect for his language, his culture, his home. Lila had learned Arabic in secret, listening to the palace guards talk, repeating words under her breath while polishing floors or folding linen. No one knew. To them, she was just the quiet girl with tired eyes and quick hands. But standing there now, a tray balanced in her trembling fingers, she realized this was her moment. She took a tiny step forward, enough for the Sheikh to notice her out of the corner of his eye. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, everything seemed to stop. The soft hum of the chandeliers, the shuffle of expensive shoes, the low murmur of translators whispering failed attempts. Then, in a voice steadier than she felt, Lila opened her mouth to speak. The men turned toward her, surprise and disbelief flickering across their faces. But before her answer could break the silence, the Sheikh raised a single hand, signaling her to wait. And in that breathless pause, everyone wondered what would happen next. The room seemed frozen as the Sheikh slowly lowered his hand, his eyes still locked on Lila. She could feel every heartbeat echo in her ears. The businessmen whispered among themselves, trying to understand who this girl was and why she, of all people, would dare to answer when none of them could. Some looked annoyed, others curious. No one knew her name, not really. She was just the maid who slipped in and out with silver trays and polite nods. A week ago, Lila had overheard two advisors speaking about this secret test. The Sheikh wanted to know who truly respected his culture enough to understand his words, not just his money. Rumors had spread that he might reward the person who passed with more than just praise, maybe even a place among his trusted circle. Lila never thought that would be her. She only wanted to learn so she could feel less invisible in these grand halls that never felt like hers. As she stood there, the polished marble under her shoes felt cold and slippery. She remembered long nights studying scraps of paper she hid under her pillow. She thought of her mother, who always told her that no knowledge was ever wasted, even if you were just a maid. And now, here she was, all eyes on her, the Sheikh, waiting for her voice to break through the heavy silence. One of the foreign guests cleared his throat loudly, trying to distract the Sheikh's focus. Another man whispered to his assistant, worried that this maid might ruin their carefully planned pitch. But the Sheikh didn't move his gaze from Lila. Slowly, he repeated his question in Arabic, his tone softer this time, as if daring her to show everyone who she really was. Lila took a breath, her hands trembling, words forming on her tongue. But just before she could answer, the huge palace doors creaked open behind her, and footsteps echoed across the hall. Lila froze as the heavy footsteps drew closer. The men at the far end of the hall turned to see who dared to interrupt such a tense moment. The palace guard stepped aside to reveal a tall man in a crisp gray suit, his face sharp and unreadable. This was Amir, the Sheikh's trusted advisor, known for his cold efficiency and watchful eyes. He looked at Lila first, then at the Sheikh, and for a second something unspoken passed between them. Amir had always watched Lila from a distance. He knew every servant's name, every hidden hallway, every whispered rumor. He knew Lila spoke Arabic in secret, but had never imagined she'd stand in the middle of a room full of powerful men, ready to prove it. He had his own reasons for keeping her unnoticed, reasons he couldn't risk losing now. With a polite nod to the guests, Amir stepped forward and addressed the Sheikh in perfect Arabic, offering to answer the question himself. Brushing Lila aside like an afterthought, but the Sheikh didn't look at Amir. His focus stayed on Lila, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he saw through the layers of secrets wrapped around her. The businessmen shifted uncomfortably, sensing there was more happening than they understood. One of them, a silver-haired investor from London, leaned toward another and whispered that if the maid really answered correctly, all their carefully rehearsed promises would mean nothing. They feared losing their deals, their power, to a girl who wasn't even supposed to speak, in the shadows by the pillars. Another pair of eyes watched Hannah, Lila's friend and fellow maid, hidden behind a curtain. She clutched her cleaning cloth to her chest, praying Lila wouldn't back down. She knew what this chance meant for both of them. If Lila could stand her ground, maybe they wouldn't have to spend their lives unseen anymore. But Amir stepped closer, his voice calm but firm, repeating the question again, as if daring Lila to stay silent. The Sheikh raised an eyebrow, curious to see whose voice would fill the silence first. The hall held its breath, waiting. Lila could feel Amir's presence beside her, like a wall she couldn't get around. His polished shoes stopped inches from the tray in her hands, and she wondered if he would order her to disappear back into the shadows where everyone thought she belonged. She glanced at the Sheikh, hoping for a sign, but his face was calm, unreadable, waiting to see if she would break under the pressure or stand her ground. She could sense the businessmen watching with thinly veiled panic. They had come to secure deals worth millions, confident they knew how to impress the Sheikh with their polished English and expensive suits. But now all their words seemed useless if they couldn't answer one simple question in Arabic. Lila's throat felt dry. Her eyes darted to Hannah, who gave her the smallest nod from behind the curtain, a silent push to be brave. Amir spoke again. His tone smooth, but with an edge that made Lila's skin prickle. He repeated the Sheikh's question, adding extra words, twisting it just enough to trip her up if she dared to open her mouth. Lila realized this wasn't just about language anymore. It was about power, about who had the right to speak and who didn't. If she failed now, Amir would win. The room would forget her in seconds. And everything she'd learned would go back to being her private secret. The Sheikh leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes locked on Lila as if to remind her she wasn't invisible anymore. The men around them fell into an uneasy silence, their phones and papers forgotten. Even the guards seemed to stand a little straighter. Sensing something rare was about to happen in this palace that had seen 1,000 secrets, Lila felt her fingers tighten. Around the tray, she took a step forward, her voice caught behind her lips, ready to push past Amir's cold challenge. She could almost taste the words in Arabic on her tongue. But before she could speak, Amir shifted, blocking her view of the Sheikh completely, and whispered something only she could hear. The words hit her like ice, and her eyes widened. Her breath stuck halfway to freedom. Lila's lips parted, but Amir's quiet words froze her where she stood. "Say nothing, or your family loses everything," he murmured, his breath cold against her ear. His eyes never left the Sheikh, his polite smile hiding the threat buried in his tone. Lila's mind raced. She felt the tray in her hands grow heavier, her fingers numb around the polished edges. How could he know about her family? She had never spoken of them to anyone in this palace. But Amir knew everything. The names, the debts, the little house back home barely standing on cracked walls and hope. The Sheikh's gaze narrowed as he studied the space between Amir and Lila. He could sense the shift in the air, the tension that no one else seemed to fully grasp. The foreign businessmen exchanged puzzled looks, thinking maybe this was all some test they hadn't prepared for. A few shifted closer, trying to catch any word in Arabic that might help them understand what power play was happening in front. Of them, behind the curtain, Hannah pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. She could see Lila's shoulders tense, see the fear flicker across her face. Hannah knew that look too well, the helplessness of being cornered by someone with power. She wanted to run out and stand beside Lila, but her feet refused to move. Then, as if to stir the quiet hall even more, the palace doors swung open once again. This time, it wasn't a lone advisor, but a small group of people, palace guards escorting a frail old woman wrapped in a simple shawl. Lila's heart dropped. It was her mother. She had no idea how Amir had done it, but there she was, standing. Under the crystal chandelier, looking so small and out of place among all the silk ties and golden robes, the Sheikh turned to see the old woman, his eyes darkening with something that made Amir's fake smile falter just for a second. The businessmen looked from the mother to the maid, suddenly realizing this story was bigger than any contract they